If you go through a study of the Kings, which is a really interesting study, if you've ever wanted to say, you know what, I need a good Bible study, I can't just really find one at the store, one that I really like, go through the Kings. Now you might know David's story, so maybe you don't start there, but go through some of these Kings, and you're gonna see some things that are apparent to you, that are apparent here in what we're going to talk about. One, most of them were very young when they started out. Hezekiah was 25. 24 when he became king, okay? His son who came after him was 18. There's a king, 2 kings or 3 kings after him that was 8 when he became king. So that's one thing you're going to notice, that these kings were very young. Another thing that you're going to notice about these kings is most of the time, a bad king preceded a good king. So there would be a king who did a lot of really bad things, and then there would be his son who would come on the scene and do a lot of really good things, and then his son would come on the scene and do a lot of bad things, and then his son, this generation of dysfunction keeps going on. If you think that your family is dysfunctional, do a study on the kings and start with David, because his family was very dysfunctional, and then as you know, his sons were, Solomon was okay, but had his issues, and it just got worse from there. So Ahaz, who is Hezekiah's father, was a bad man. In fact, he's one of the kings where they would say didn't follow the Lord. And then Hezekiah's son was the same way. As I said, he's mentioned in the Hebrew Bible as one of the kings mentioned in the whole genealogy of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. That's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal that he would get mentioned in that genealogy. One of the things that he did that he's really known for is that he enacted sweeping religious reform around Judah at that particular time, in which he removed all foreign deities from the temple in Jerusalem. And these were foreign deities, most of them that had been put up by his father. He took them all down. And he restored the worship of God or Yahweh in accordance to how the Torah told them. So he basically took the Torah and enacted that and put that back into practice within the kingship. And if you're everybody in here, I think is pretty familiar with how governments work. He basically was the president who brought God back into the White House, okay? And it had been removed from the White House, So he brought all this back. And it's important for us to understand his history. One of the things I want us to really pay close attention to is what I mentioned earlier. He's 24 years old. He ruled for about 25 years, but he started his kingship at 24. He made these sweeping reforms at the age of 24, 25 years old. A young leader that basically was taking back for God what was God's to begin with. So I would label Hezekiah as a very successful man. He was a very successful king. So what I want to talk about, there's lots of things we can talk about tonight in terms of Hezekiah. What I want us to do is spend some time in chapter 18, just verses 1 through 8, and I want us to look at some of the characteristics that made Hezekiah very successful. And I think all of us would say in some area of our life, maybe more than one area of our life, we desire to be successful. Monica and I desire to be successful in our marriage. We desire to be successful parents. We desire to, business owners, ministry, mentors, whatever that might be, we desire to be successful. Well, I think Hezekiah really teaches us some really key elements about how to be successful. So are we ready? All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to kind of go through verse by verse and kind of break this down. At the end, we're going to have some discussion. So beginning with chapter 18, verse number 1, I'm going to read this to you. It says, in the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, which we talked about, the king of Judah, began to reign. Okay? Here it is. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abba, the daughter of Zechariah. Okay? And here's our first key verse, verse 3. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord according to all that David his father had done. Let's read that again. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. In fact, can we all read that together? You might have a different version. Just read your version. It's all English. Verse 3, let's read that. Ready? And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. What does that mean to us? Well, let's look at him and who he was. He was a king. God had placed him in this position to rule over God's people. He was given a sense of responsibility. He was to see things from a very different perspective than just the common man. He was to see things from a kingly, I don't know if that's a word, I wrote it down like 6 times, but I'm going to use it, a kingly perspective. So I have a question for you. Do you make decisions in your life from a kingly perspective? Meaning, you and I have been charged by God to rule. We've been given responsibilities. We've been asked to watch over wives or husbands or children or businesses or communities or nations or countries or worlds. We've been asked as believers of Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, we've been given some king responsibilities. Do you make your decisions in life based on that? Because here's how Hezekiah made his decisions. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. It doesn't say that he did most of what he did or some of what he did. He didn't separate anything out. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. He was determined to do what was right. His decisions that he was going to make were going to be the decisions that were right in the eyes of the Lord. Now, what would he have to have in order to make that happen? He would have to have a very good understanding of who the Lord was at 25 years old. That's pretty impressive. Don't we know a lot of older adults, older than 25 years old, that don't have a very clear understanding of who the Lord is? That don't necessarily make the decisions according to what's right in God's eyes? I'll take it another step further and ask you this question. Who or what influences your decisions? He clearly was saying here that his decisions were influenced by his relationship with the Lord. Who or what influences your decisions? Does fear influence your decisions? Well, we know what influenced his father's decisions. His father's decisions were influenced by greed and by wanting more and by position. Are your decisions influenced by position? I've met people before who feel like they have a voice in something based on position. What are your decisions based on? What or who influence? And I say what or who because that's true. What or who influences the decisions that we make? Hezekiah was influenced by the Lord. The Lord drove him to make the decisions that he was making. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. He made kingdom decisions. And there are 2 kingdoms. There's the kingdom created on earth that we see as all the things that we see are important. And then there's God's kingdom, and those are the things that he sees are important. Hezekiah edged toward the kingdom decisions that mattered, the capital K. He saw God's kingdom as the most important. So when it says in verse 3 that he did things that were right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that David, his father, had done, he's using David as an earthly example of someone that he upholded as made, for the most part, a higher percentage good decisions than he did bad decisions. But it's funny that he uses David also as an example, and I think he almost uses David as an example. Remember, who did he say his father was? David, right? As his father David did. But earlier it said who his real father was. But he did not use him as the example. So not only do we have God that influences our decisions, but there are people who will influence our decisions. Who are the people in your life that you're allowing to influence your decisions? Who's your center of gravity here on earth? Who holds you down? Who keeps you grounded? When you get out of bounds with God, who's there to make sure that you're okay? I'm lucky to have my wife, who does a fantastic job of that, but I also have a core group of guys that do that. So he made kingly decisions, not only in the decisions he made or the fact that he allowed God to influence him, but he looked for earthly people to help influence him. All right, the second thing, let's go on to verse 4. Verse 4 says, he removed the high places and broke the pillars. And he broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made, for until those days the people of Israel had made offerings to it. Part of his success was that he removed the high places. And what do we mean by that? He removed the places that people had placed higher than where they thought God should be. Do you have anything in your life that is a high place right now? That's a high place that's really higher than where God should be sitting? Is it fear? Is it anger? It could be anything. Is it anything that you are really putting at such a high place that it causes you to focus on it and really that's where God should be? That's what Hezekiah said. He said, you know what, I'm going to take down all these high places because they're getting in the way of the highness of where the Lord should be. What made him successful is that he confronted what others would not confront. Remember, his dad had a group of men that served with him. Some of them probably followed the Lord. However, they did not have the courage to tear down the high places. He confronted that. He knew, have you ever been a part of something, that decision you had to make that you knew was going to ruffle the feathers of some people, but it had to be made? And so you had to confront that? We've never had to do that here, thank the Lord. But that happens in all kinds of different organizations and congregations of churches where you have to make a decision that to some people, that's a high place. That's a high place. You know? Change a little music. That's my high place. You're messing with my high place. And we think that our high places are just this places of sin and greed. And listen, our high places can be things that we think are of the Lord, but God says, you know what? You're putting that in place of me. That's a real problem. We put our judgment of other people who are doing wrong things at a higher place than where God should sit. We put our lack of forgiveness, our stubbornness, our pride, all these things that we think we do in the name of the Lord Savior. We do this, and it's actually a high place that needs to be torn down because it's taken the place of the grace and mercy of God. Hezekiah was done with that. Remember, what did it say he removed? The bronze serpent. This was Moses. This was the guy. This was the man. This was, delivered the people. Put the whole Red Sea parted, threw the thing down. It turned into a snake, the burning bush. This was God's chosen man to this point. It was Moses and David. And this was the man. And he took it down. Why did he take it down? People were worshiping it and not God. Are you there? Do you get what I'm saying? We can worship in Christianity so many things that we feel are important that to God, He's saying, you know what? It's not more important than me. In fact, that thing's starting to get in the place of the relationship that we have. And He's telling us, tear down the high place, and we will go to the mats with Him on it. Hezekiah said, you know what? Just take them all down. Hezekiah said to his people, basically when he tore all that down, there's only room for one kingdom here. And it's not my kingdom, Hezekiah's, it's God's kingdom. How many kingdoms do you have running around in your life? Is it your business? Is it the chasing money? How many kingdoms do you have? Because God's saying, listen, there's only one kingdom. Tear down the high places. That's actually a good sermon. Do not, if I see that on Facebook or anywhere, I'm going to say you stole it from me. Tear down. Hezekiah's telling us in the scriptures, he's giving us an example of tearing down the high places. We can't say to the Lord, you can have all of my life except my finances, my relationships, my entertainment, my future plans. You can have it all except all of those things that are my high places. And if you start messing with those, I'm going to have a problem with you. And what we do is when God starts messing with our high places, and he starts kind of, I take it as like these pillars we have and it starts to shake a little bit, we get really upset. And then we start blaming God. Then we get mad and upset with him. You're shaking my life up. Why are you putting me through this? He said, I want to get rid of your high places because you won't take them down. I can remember, I've told you this story before, but it works here, so I'm going to tell it again. When I was had just become a believer, and I had a great job. It was just an awesome job. I was making a lot of money, and I was a believer though, and I was so just knew there was more to do. I was like, there's more to do. There's more to do. There's more to do here. And I was praying to God. I just want to do more. And I remember God telling me, quit your job. And I said to him, you've lost your ever-loving mind if you think I'm going to quit my job. I live in a one-bedroom apartment. I got a $600 car payment. I'm not quitting my job. I'm making good money. I'm going to use it for God's work. He said, quit your job. He said it to me again, quit your job. What's he doing? He's shaking my pillar, man. He's shaking my high place right now. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to quit my job. Third time he told me, quit your job. I said, I'm not quitting my job. The next morning, I got a fax from the company that laid me off. It's as if God was saying, if you don't tear down the high place, I will tear down the high place. But it will be more painful if I tear the high place down. We could have saved ourselves a lot of trouble and got started a little quicker on this whole business of me getting you to do more, because that is what you said you wanted to do. And I'm all about more people doing my work because the harvest field is plentiful, but the workers are few. So we can do it your way or we can do it my way, but the high place is coming down. Hezekiah just beat God to the punch and said, you know what? The high places are coming down. And Hezekiah told God, you can have the whole kingdom. This is your kingdom anyways, God, it's not mine. These are your people, God, not mine. You've given me some authority to help rule in your name, but I'm taking the high places down. Are you willing, am I willing to remove the high places? That leads to success. You want to grow your business, you want to grow your marriage, you want to reach your kids, you've got to take some high places down. All right, thirdly, let's read verses 5 and 6. He says, he trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel, so that there was none like him among all the kings of Judah after him, nor among those who were before him. Can I read that again? I want you to imagine this written on your tombstone. He trusted, she trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel, so that there were none like him, her, among all the kings of Judah, the world, after him, her, nor among those who were before him or her. Could you imagine that? Imagine if somebody said that about you. There was no one greater. There was no one greater in Highlands or Cashiers than this person. There was no one greater in the eyes of the Lord. There was no one that did more in the eyes of the Lord than this person. Think about that. What does that mean? There were no other kings like him among all others before and after who had sat in that throne. People, we know who sat in that throne, don't we? Know David sat in that throne. He's saying there were none better. He had such well-placed desires. His desire was to do nothing but serve the Lord. Can we say that? Can we be in a posture where we can be that type of person? Where is your desires? Where are they placed? You know, it must be easy, or it must have been easy, to be a king that trusted in the resources of his kingdom, right? And he would try, and a king in those days would try to accomplish, problems and beat their problems with weapons or wisdom or wealth. Hezekiah dealt with problems in one way. He trusted the Lord. I mean, that's what it says. It says that, right? He trusted in the Lord. And that trust made him successful. He trusted in the Lord. Is that your desire? Is your desire to trust in the Lord? Where do you put your trust? Where do you put your desires? When you wake up every day, what's the first thought that you have? I have to believe Hezekiah's first thought when he woke up today was not, how am I going to deal with this problem with this country that's getting ready to attack us? Well, I better build a bigger army, and we better gather more wealth, and we better get our men and women trained, and I need some more wisdom, so I need to go meet with this person and this person and this person. When he got up every day, you know what he thought? I'm going to trust in the Lord. I don't know what this day is going to consist of, but my desire, first thing this morning, is I'm going to trust in the Lord. That's what I'm going to do. That's it. I'm going to trust in the Lord. And his trust in God was so strong that there were no other kings like him before he sat on the throne, and no other kings like him after he sat on the throne. That's serious business to me. That's a person, when I'm reading the Bible, I need to get to know this person, right? I need to get to know Jesus. I know that for a fact, right? And I want to get to know Hezekiah, because basically, if he's the greatest king, I need to get to know him. So think about that. He held fast. He held fast to the trust in the Lord. He held fast to what was good and pure. He held fast to the direction of God. My question to you here is, what are you holding fast to? What are you holding fast to? He held fast to trust. He trusted God. Imagine though, I know it's hard for us to do this. I do this though, I just try to get a picture of this king of Judah, who at this particular time now, we think that countries don't get along now. Back then, nobody got along with anybody. And everybody was looking to take over whatever territory they could. They were threatened all the time. In fact, when we get, if you start going into verse 13, you find out that they did get attacked. He doesn't get up worrying about what the day's going to be like. He doesn't get up worrying about who's going to attack him. He doesn't get worried about who's going to poison him in his own kingdom. He trusts the Lord. He held fast to that trust. And what we see as you uncover more about his life, he was just not a worrisome guy. And he was very successful. He ruled for a long time. 29 years at that particular time is a long time to rule. He stayed alive and ruled for a long time. Why? He trusted. Hezekiah blamed no one for what happened around him because he trusted God. You know why we blame people for things? And we blame God for things? Because we don't trust him. Because we always think he ought to have a better way. He ought to have something more for us. Why is he letting this happen to us? We don't trust him. We don't. I have conversations with missionaries all the time. And, the sad part of what's happening in missions now is that missionaries are becoming so consumed with raising financial needs that they're getting away from mission. And I have a heart for that, and I have a heart for them. And I have to tell them all the time, hold fast to your trust in the Lord. Don't hold fast to poverty. Don't hold fast to the idea of poverty or the idea that something's not going to work out. Hold fast to your trust in the Lord. trust in God is not something that we many times can tangibly see or put our hands on, but trust in God is something, it's who we are as believers. We trust in God. We trust in God for healing. We trust in God for His will. We trust in God. Hezekiah's desire was placed in the trust that he had for the Lord. All right, last thing. Verse 7. So, verse 6 says, he did not depart from following him. Man, what an awesome statement. He did not depart from following him, but kept the commandments that the Lord commanded Moses. And then verse 7, here it is. Anybody want to argue with this next statement? Anybody in here want to say, man, I hope that doesn't happen to me? And the Lord was with him. Wherever he went out, he prospered. Is there anybody here tonight that wants to say, you know what? I would prefer if the Lord was not with me. And in fact, I don't want Him to be with me, and I'm not really down with prospering. No. God was with him. Man. This statement had not been said of any king since David. Of all the generations of kings that had come down, no other king had this statement been made of, that God was with him. Think about that. All these kings who had ruled, not all bad, during this time. But because he trusted in the Lord, and because he did not depart from following God, what was God's response? God was with him. Can I point out, which I know I don't have to you, can I just point out the simplicity of that equation there? Right? He did not depart from following God. What was the result? God was with him. Wow. Right? He upheld and obeyed the commandments that God had given Moses. Well, that doesn't seem too hard to me. It doesn't say anything about the fact that he went to church 52 weeks out of the year. And his favorite song was Mighty to Save. And it didn't say he attended 47 Bible studies. It simply says he never departed from following God. That means God influenced every decision he made. He included God in it. Everything he did, every move he went, every kingdom decision, everything that he did, he did not depart from following God. Following God, not God following him. Not him getting ready to do something and say, hey, God, are you going to be with me if I make this decision? No, he said, hey, God, what do you want to do? I'm going to follow you. You want me to be king? Great, I'll be king. You want me to be the greatest king ever? Sure, I'll do it. You want me to take down the high places? Absolutely. You want me to become all about you and not about me? Absolutely. Do you want me to teach that to my people? I sure will. And he didn't say, if I do all this, now what's your response going to be to me? You know? He didn't demand that, hey, if I don't depart from following you, that means you're going to be with me always and I'll prosper. No. It just simply says from the act of not departing from following God, that was it. He submitted to God's values. He submitted to the character of God, and God was with him. Where does the prosperity come from? Well, the prosperity doesn't come, the root of the prosperity here does not come from the fact that, what it says, right, that God was with him. That's not where the prosperity comes from. The prosperity comes from the fact earlier that he didn't depart from following God. See, it was what we always think is that prosperity comes from God. Prosperity comes from the action of us not departing from him. And if we don't depart from God, we see prosperity in a whole different view. We don't see prosperity as money and tangible things. We see prosperity as a kingdom, heavenly kingdom mindset. We don't see prosperity as an internal thing. We see prosperity as an eternal thing because we don't depart from God. And we don't depart from His teachings, and we don't depart from who He is. Prosperity comes from not departing. Do you find yourself in times in your life departing from following God? It's easy to do, isn't it, really? I mean, if we had to be honest, right? Bank account gets a little low. What do we depart from following God? We follow fear, anxiety. Have a little argument with somebody, right? What do we depart from God? We depart to lack of forgiveness. We don't agree with somebody what they said. We depart from God. We start following judgment. That's easy to do. But can I ask you, all this stuff I just mentioned over here, is there prosperity in all this? No. There's just always a bunch of heartache and a bunch of whatever. I've been counseling some people that are going through some things with their kids. It's gut-wrenching that as parents, you have to go through these things with these babies that you held in your arms, and now they're adults and think they have everything figured out. Or they're not even really adults. They think they're adults. But what I tell parents is, listen, there's no prosperity in feeling like you're responsible for where they're at now. There's no prosperity in the anxiety. There's no follow God's lead. Do not depart from Him. Do not try to handle whatever the situation is outside of following His lead and following Him. And what does His Word say about it? And where is He leading you? Because if you depart from Him, there is a very, very good likelihood that He will not be with you and you will not prosper. With your business, do not depart God from your business. Do not depart God from your marriage. Do not depart God from your faith. You can't do that. There's no prosperity in that. So that's Hezekiah.